My name is Daniel Carter, and if you had asked me a month ago, I would have told you my life was stable, maybe even happy. I had a loving wife, Emily, a good job as a systems analyst, and a comfortable suburban home that felt like a safe haven. If there were cracks in our marriage, I didn't see them. Or maybe, deep down, I did, but I was too blind or too trusting to acknowledge them. Emily and I had been married for 11 years. She was everything I wanted in a partner: smart, beautiful, and fiercely independent. We had our inside jokes, our little traditions, and even when life got monotonous, I took comfort in the routine. Our Friday movie nights, our morning coffee conversations, the way she'd lean against me while reading on the couch, it all felt real. Solid. That's why I didn't think much of it when she started acting a little distant. It started small: missed calls, late nights at work, the occasional cold shoulder when I tried to initiate intimacy. She worked in marketing, and sudden late nights weren't unheard of. When she brushed off my concern with a sigh and a kiss on the cheek, I let it go. "Dan, it's just a busy season," she said one night, coming home past 11. "We've got a huge client, and the team is under pressure. Don't overthink it." I wanted to believe her. But then, there were other things. The way she kept her phone glued to her side, even when she was just going to the bathroom. The way she started dressing up more for work, wearing perfume she hadn't worn in years. The way she suddenly became nicer. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Maybe I was just overanalyzing things. After all, marriages go through phases, right? People get busy, they get stressed, they change their habits. But then, something happened that I couldn't ignore. It was a Thursday evening, and Emily was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But the name on the screen froze me in place. Unknown number. A single text previewed on the lock screen. "Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again?" My stomach turned to ice. I stood there, staring at the message, my pulse pounding so loudly in my ears that I barely registered the sound of the shower turning off. I had a split second to decide what to do: confront her. Pretend I didn't see it? Grab the phone and dig for more? Instead, I did nothing. I walked out of the room, sat down on the couch, and tried to breathe. Emily came out of the shower a few minutes later, her damp hair wrapped in a towel. She gave me a tired smile, completely unaware that my world had just shifted on its axis. "Hey, what do you want for dinner?" she asked casually, drying her hair. I forced a smile. "Anything's fine. I didn't sleep that night." My mind was racing, my gut twisting with dread. The message was vague, but the implication was clear. Someone was thinking about last night, a night I knew nothing about. The next morning, as Emily kissed me goodbye before heading off to work, I tried to ignore the feeling that I had just lost something precious, something I hadn't even realized was slipping away. I had to know the truth. And I had no idea what I was about to uncover. That text haunted me for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it flashing on her screen: "Can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again?" It replayed in my head while I was brushing my teeth, while I was at work pretending to focus on lines of code, while I was eating dinner across from Emily as she scrolled through her phone, completely unaware that I was unraveling. I told myself I needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. A text message wasn't enough, not yet. If I confronted her now, she'd just make excuses, twist things around, gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. I needed more. So, I started watching her. Emily had always been predictable. She woke up at 6:30, showered, had her coffee, and left for work by 7:30. She worked in a downtown office, 20 minutes from our house, and usually came home around 6, barring any late nights. But over the past few weeks, those late nights had become more frequent. Sometimes, she'd text at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock saying she was swamped and not to wait up for dinner. I told myself I needed to track her movements. I didn't want to, but what choice did I have? The following Monday, I installed a GPS tracker in her car. It was easier than I thought, just a small device I stuck under the dashboard, completely undetectable. A few hours later, I downloaded an app that let me see her real-time location. It felt disgusting, spying on my own wife, but the alternative was worse. The first few days, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She went to work. She came home. She stopped for coffee at the same place she always did. But then, on Thursday, things changed. At 12:15 p.m., while I was eating lunch at my desk, I checked the app. Emily wasn't at work. Her car was parked at a hotel. A hotel. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. I refreshed the page, convinced it was some kind of mistake. Maybe she had a work meeting? A conference? But no. It was a mid-range hotel on the outskirts of town, one of those places you book by the hour. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I told myself to wait. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation. Maybe I was just jumping to conclusions. But when I checked the tracker again an hour later, her car was still there. By the time she finally left 2.5 hours later, I knew. That was the moment everything shattered. That night, I barely spoke to her. She came home around 6:30, same as usual, kissed me on the cheek, and acted like nothing had happened. But I couldn't stop staring at her, wondering whose hands had been on her just hours earlier. My mind raced with questions. Who was he? How long had this been going on? Was I just an idiot who had been blind to the signs for months, years? I had to know more. So, I dug deeper. I checked our phone bill, something I had never done before. Emily and I had always respected each other's privacy, but now, that privacy was a shield she was using to hide her betrayal. There was a number that popped up constantly. Hundreds of texts, dozens of calls, all at odd hours. It wasn't a saved contact, which meant she didn't want me to know who it was. I copied the number and ran a quick search. It belonged to someone named Jason Carter. The last name hit me like a gut punch. Carter. My last name. At first, my brain refused to put the pieces together. But then it clicked. Jason Carter wasn't just some random guy. He was my cousin. My own goddamn cousin. I nearly threw up. Jason and I had never been close. He was 5 years younger, the kind of guy who had always skated through life on charm and good looks. He had bounced from job to job, woman to woman, never settling down. I hadn't seen him in years, but we still exchanged pleasantries at family events, made the occasional small talk. And now, he was sleeping with my wife. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. This wasn't just infidelity. This was betrayal on a level I couldn't even comprehend. I needed confirmation. Real, undeniable confirmation. The next day, I called in sick to work. I told Emily I was working from home, but the moment she left for the office, I grabbed my car keys and followed her. My heart pounded as I trailed behind her, keeping my distance, my fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly they ached. At 12:10 p.m., I watched as she pulled into the same hotel parking lot. I parked down the street, far enough away that she wouldn't see me. Then, with shaking hands, I grabbed my phone and opened the camera. I waited. And then, at 12:20 p.m., Jason pulled up. I nearly lost it right then and there. I wanted to run up to them, grab him by the collar, and beat him into the pavement. I wanted to scream in her face, demand to know how she could do this to me, to us. But I didn't. I forced myself to wait. I watched as she climbed into his car. I snapped a picture as he leaned over and kissed her. I had my proof. I sat there for a long time after they disappeared into the hotel, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I had spent 11 years believing I was married to a woman who loved me. I had spent 11 years building a life with her, trusting her, thinking we were in this together. And now, I had undeniable proof that it had all been a lie. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the evidence, feeling everything inside me go numb. I didn't know what I was going to do next. But one thing was for sure. She wasn't going to get away with this. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, staring at my phone. The picture of Emily and Jason kissing in his car burned into my mind like a scar I would never be able to erase. I felt hollow. The rage was there, boiling just beneath the surface, but something about seeing it had drained the energy out of me. They were still in the hotel. I had thought about storming in, busting down the door, catching them in the act. But then what? What would that accomplish? They would deny, lie, twist the story. Emily would make excuses. Jason would act smug, like this was some kind of joke. No. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of a screaming match. I needed to think. I needed to plan. By the time Emily left the hotel, my mind was clear. I followed her home, trailing 2 cars behind, making sure she didn't notice me. When she pulled into our driveway and walked inside like nothing had happened, I felt a new kind of anger settle in my gut. She was so comfortable with her lie. So at ease. I pulled into the driveway a few minutes later, parked, and sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. This was it. I was going to confront her. The first lie. When I stepped into the house, Emily was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine. She looked up, gave me a tired smile. "You're home early," she said, swirling the wine in her glass like she didn't have another man's sweat still on her skin. I walked over to her, set my phone on the counter, and pulled up the picture. Her smile faltered. "What's this?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. Emily's face went blank as she looked at the screen. I watched her process it, watched her mind scramble for an excuse. Then, she did what cheaters always do. She lied. "It's not what it looks like," she said. I let out a bitter laugh. Not what it looks like. The most classic, overused, pathetic excuse in the book. Then what is it? I asked, crossing my arms. Emily hesitated, then set her wine down and straightened her posture. "Jason and we've been meeting to talk." "To talk?" I repeated, my voice flat. She nodded quickly. "Yes. He's been going through some things, and I didn't tell you because I knew you'd get the wrong idea." I picked up my phone, swiped to the next picture. It was the one of Jason's car pulling into the hotel. He needed to talk in a hotel? Her face paled. I let the silence stretch between us. "Just tell me the truth," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily swallowed, looking anywhere but at me. "It just happened." I clenched my jaw. "How long?" She hesitated. That tiny pause told me whatever number she was about to give me was a lie. 3 weeks, she said. 3 weeks. I let out a sharp breath through my nose. 3 weeks, I repeated, shaking my head. "Emily, I checked the phone records. I know you've been talking to him for months." Her face crumpled. "Okay, fine. It's been longer, but nothing," I snapped. "How long?" She looked down. 6 months. I laughed, a hollow, humorless sound. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Half a year of her sleeping next to me, kissing me, pretending everything was normal while she was sneaking around with Jason. I took a step back, rubbing a hand over my face. I felt like I was going to be sick. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Emily said quietly. "It was a mistake." I dropped my hand and glared at her. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is running a red light. You don't accidentally sleep with someone for 6 months. She flinched at the venom in my voice. Then, like the coward she was, she tried to blame me. The blame game. "You've been distant," she said suddenly, crossing her arms. "You've been wrapped up in work, barely paying attention to me." I stared at her in disbelief. "Are you actually trying to make this my fault?" "I'm just saying, I felt neglected," she snapped. "And Jason was there for me." I let out a sharp breath, shaking my head. "Do you hear yourself?" She folded her arms tighter, but I could see the cracks forming. What do you want me to say, Dan? She said, her voice rising. That I'm a horrible person? That I don't deserve to be forgiven? I took a slow step forward, leveling her with a cold stare. I don't want anything from you, Emily. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. I just want you to know that I see you now. I see who you really are. Her eyes filled with tears. Dan, please. I turned away from her. I needed space. Air. Anything to get away from the suffocating weight of her betrayal. I grabbed my keys and walked toward the door. Where are you going? She asked, panic creeping into her voice. Out. She took a step forward. Dan, don't. I turned to face her one last time. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. Then, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. The beginning of the end. I drove aimlessly for hours, replaying the conversation over and over. No matter how many ways I looked at it, there was no fixing this. No going back. Emily wasn't sorry she cheated. She was sorry she got caught. And as much as it hurt, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to stay with a woman who saw my love as something disposable. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about taking my life back. And it was time to make her pay for what she had done. I drove for hours that night. The city lights blurred past as I gripped the steering wheel, my thoughts spinning in every direction. 6 months. 6 months of lies. 6 months of deception. And the worst part? She had tried to make it my fault. I replayed the confrontation in my head, picking apart every detail, every hesitation in her voice. The way she had lied without blinking. The way she had only admitted the truth when I forced it out of her. Emily wasn't sorry. Not really. She was sorry she got caught. I didn't go home that night. I checked into a cheap motel on the other side of town, shut off my phone, and stared at the ceiling until morning. I knew what I had to do next. The plan. Divorce was inevitable. That much was clear. There was no coming back from this. But I wasn't just going to walk away quietly and let her pretend like she was the victim. No. I was going to make sure she felt this. Over the next few days, I started laying the groundwork. I met with a divorce lawyer, a guy named Mark who came highly recommended. He didn't sugarcoat things. He told me exactly what to expect and how to position myself to walk away with as much as possible. Your wife cheated, so that gives us leverage, Mark said, tapping his pen on his desk. But this is a no-fault state, so you need to be strategic. Strategic. That's what this was now. A game of chess. And Emily had no idea I was already 5 moves ahead. First, I quietly gathered every piece of evidence I had to screenshots of her texts and call logs with Jason, the GPS records of her car at the hotel, the photos I had taken. I even pulled our financial records to see if she had been using our joint accounts to fund her affair. Spoiler, she had. Second, I started making arrangements to leave. I found an apartment across town, paid the deposit, and set up everything in my name. No shared utilities. No traceable connection to Emily. When the time came, I was going to walk out of that house and never look back. Third, I needed revenge. Not the petty kind. Not some half-baked scheme that would make me look desperate. No, I wanted something calculated. Precise. Something that would make her regret every single choice she had made. And I knew exactly how to do it. The execution. For 3 days, I played the role of the devastated husband. I came home late, avoided eye contact, gave short, emotionless answers to her questions. I let her stew in the guilt, let her believe I was still trying to process everything. And she fell for it. On the 4th night, she tried to talk to me. Dan, we need to figure this out, she said softly, sitting across from me at the dinner table. I don't want to lose you. I looked up at her, expression blank. Oh? She reached across the table for my hand. I didn't move. I'll end it, she promised. I already told Jason it's over. I let out a small, humorless laugh. Did you? Yes, she insisted. I don't want this to be the end of us. Lies. I had checked her phone records that morning. She had called Jason 3 times that day. You're just saying that because you got caught, I said flatly. Emily's face crumpled. That's not true. I stood up. I don't believe you. And honestly? I don't care anymore. I left her sitting there, staring after me with wide, tear-filled eyes. The next day, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. The public unraveling. Emily and Jason thought they had gotten away with it. That they could spin their little affair into some tragic love story. I was about to destroy that illusion. Step 1, the family bombshell. I sent a group text to her entire family, her parents, her sister, her aunts, and uncles. Hey everyone, I just wanted to let you all know that Emily and I are getting a divorce. Turns out, she's been cheating on me with my cousin Jason for the past 6 months. Just thought you should hear it from me before the rumors start. Hope you all have a great day. Then I turned off my phone. Step 2, the work fallout. Jason worked at a small marketing firm. Emily had once mentioned that his boss was a conservative family man who didn't tolerate workplace drama. So, I made sure he got an anonymous email. Subject, Employee Conduct Concern. Message, just thought you should know that your employee, Jason Carter, has been having an affair with a married woman. He regularly uses work hours to meet up with her at a hotel. Attached are some records of their rendezvous. Thought you might want to know what kind of person you have representing your company. Step 3, the friend circle implosion. Most of our friends thought Emily was this sweet, devoted wife. That changed when they got a shared Dropbox link titled The Truth About Emily. Inside? Screenshots. Pictures. GPS records. I didn't add commentary. I let the evidence speak for itself. Step 4, the final goodbye. I walked into our house that night, completely calm. Emily was on the couch, eyes red from crying. Dan, please, she started, standing up. I held up a hand. Save it. Then I pulled out an envelope and set it on the table. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Divorce papers, she whispered. Already signed, I said. All you have to do is agree to the terms. She flipped through the pages, her face growing paler with each line. You're taking everything, she choked out. I shrugged. You cheated. I'm making sure I land on my feet. Her lip quivered. Dan, I also gave your family a heads up, I interrupted. Oh, and Jason's job? Might be in jeopardy. Just a heads up. She looked at me in horror. And don't worry, I added, smirking. Our friends know too. So, you won't have to explain anything. Everyone already knows exactly who you are. Tears welled up in her eyes. You're ruining my life, she whispered. I leaned in, my voice cold. You ruined your own life the second you decided to betray me. Then I grabbed my bag, walked to the door, and turned back one last time. Good luck, Emily. And with that, I was gone. I didn't look back as I walked out of that house for the last time. Not once. I knew what I was leaving behind, the shattered remnants of a marriage that had been rotting from the inside long before I found out about the affair. Emily had made her choice, and now she was living with the consequences. As I stepped into my car, I glanced at my phone. It had been on silent, but when I unlocked it, I saw the chaos unfolding in real time. 34 missed calls. 17 unread texts from Emily. 10 from Jason. Another dozen from mutual friends and family. I scrolled through the messages, skimming them without really reading. Emily, Dan, please pick up. We need to talk. Emily, I didn't mean for this to happen. You have to believe me. Emily, you're being cruel. Please, don't do this to me. Emily, my mom won't even talk to me. What did you tell them? I smirked at that last one. I had told them the truth. Jason, on the other hand, was predictably more aggressive. Jason, you coward. You had to drag everyone into this? Jason, you think ruining my job makes you a man? Get over yourself. Jason, if you want to handle this like a real man, let's talk. Face to face. I laughed bitterly at that one. Jason wanted to talk now? After 6 months of sneaking around behind my back? After lying to my face? I didn't know him a damn thing. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat and pulled out of the driveway. The chapter was closed. Or so I thought. The unfinished business. The next morning, I woke up in my new apartment. The bed felt foreign, the walls too bare. But for the first time in weeks, I wasn't waking up next to a liar. That alone made the space feel lighter. I had barely taken my first sip of coffee when my phone started buzzing again. Emily. I sighed, debating whether to ignore it. But something told me she wasn't going to stop until she got the last word. So, I answered. Dan, she breathed, her voice hoarse. Thank God. I thought you'd never. What do you want, Emily? I cut in, keeping my tone flat. A pause. Then, a sniffle. I don't know where to start. I leaned back in my chair. How about with the truth? More silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end, shaky and uneven. I don't know why I did it, she finally said. It wasn't about you. It was never about you. I pinched the bridge of my nose. That's a cop-out, Emily. You don't just accidentally cheat for 6 months. Her breath hitched. I was lonely, Dan. You were always so wrapped up in work, in your routines. Jason made me feel seen. I let out a hollow laugh. So, let me get this straight, you felt ignored, so instead of talking to me, you jumped into bed with my cousin? It wasn't like that, she protested. Then what was it like? I challenged. Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like that. She went quiet. Look, Emily, I continued, sighing. You're not sorry you cheated. You're sorry you lost. You're sorry you got caught. And now you're scrambling because your life is falling apart. That's not fair, she whispered. I scoffed. Fair? Fair would have been you ending things before sleeping with someone else. Fair would have been not betraying me. Another silence. This time, longer. Finally, she exhaled. So, this is it? I closed my eyes for a moment. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. This was it the second you decided to lie to my face. I heard a quiet sob on the other end. I didn't want to lose you. I clenched my jaw. Then you shouldn't have thrown me away. I ended the call. And just like that, I was free. One last visit. I thought I was finished dealing with them. I really did. But Jason had other plans. 2 days later, he showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a meeting when my assistant knocked, looking uncomfortable. There's a man outside demanding to see you, she said. Says it's personal. I knew who it was before I even stepped into the lobby. Jason stood there, looking every bit the arrogant bastard I remembered. His jaw was set, his arms crossed. But there was something else in his expression, something I hadn't seen before. Fear. Let's talk, he said stiffly. I motioned to the door. Get out. He didn't move. Dan, come on. Be reasonable. Reasonable? I repeated, laughing under my breath. You slept with my wife, and now you're here, what asking me to be reasonable about it? His nostrils flared. You ruined my job. You ruined your own job, I shot back. You made your bed, Jason. Don't cry because you have to lie in it. his fists clenched at his sides. I get it, you're pissed. But do you really have to burn my whole life down? I took a step closer, lowering my voice. You burned your own life down the moment you betrayed me. You did this to yourself. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, Jason looked small. Like he had finally realized just how badly he had fucked up. I shook my head. You don't deserve an apology, Jason. You don't even deserve this conversation. His shoulders sagged. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew there was nothing left to say. So, he turned and walked out. And I didn't watch him go. The final goodbye. That night, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat on my balcony, looking out at the city. I had spent 11 years building a life with someone who hadn't valued it. But now, I had a chance to build something new. Something better. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and deleted Emily's number. Then, for the first time in months, I smiled. Because the past was behind me. And my future? It was finally mine again. The first morning after everything was finalized, I woke up in my new apartment and stared at the ceiling for a long time. I had spent years waking up next to Emily, feeling the familiar weight of her beside me, the smell of her perfume lingering in the sheets. Now, the bed was cold and empty. And for the first time, I was okay with that. The divorce papers had been signed. My accounts were separated. My lawyer had assured me that I was walking away in the best possible position. I wouldn't have to pay alimony since Emily's infidelity had been well documented, and I had been meticulous in my planning. But even with the legal victory, the emotional weight still sat on my chest. I wasn't naive enough to think I'd feel instantly free. Yes, I had won. Yes, I had exposed them. Yes, I had made them feel it. But what now? For years, my identity had been tied to being a husband. A partner. A man who thought he had built something real. Now, I was just me. And I had to figure out what that meant. Rebuilding from nothing. The first thing I did was delete every trace of Emily from my life. Photos, old messages, even the playlists we had built together. I wiped it all clean. Next, I changed my routine. No more Friday night movie traditions, no more morning coffee chats, those things belonged to my old life. I needed something new. So, I started going to the gym again, something I had neglected over the past few years. I picked up old hobbies reading, hiking, even playing guitar, which I hadn't touched in over a decade. At work, I threw myself into projects, staying late not because I had to, but because it gave me something to focus on. And slowly, I started feeling like a person again. The ghosts of the past. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Emily still tried to reach out, despite everything. At first, it was desperate apologies. Then, guilt-tripping. Then, outright anger. Her texts would swing between "I miss you" and "you ruined my life." I ignored them all. Jason, on the other hand, stayed quiet after our last conversation. I knew through mutual friends that he was struggling, he had lost his job, his reputation was in the toilet, and his family wanted nothing to do with him. I'd be lying if I said I felt bad. The only thing that stung was knowing that I had once considered him family. But people like Jason? They never change. So, I moved on. A new chapter. 3 months later, something unexpected happened. I met someone. Her name was Claire. She was a friend of a friend, someone I had met briefly years ago but had never really talked to. We ran into each other at a coffee shop, struck up a conversation, and before I knew it, I was laughing. Like, genuinely laughing. It felt strange, foreign good. She didn't pry about my past. She didn't ask about Emily. She just existed with me in the present. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. The final goodbye. One night, about 6 months after the divorce, I got an email from Emily. It was long, emotional, full of regret. She told me she had been thinking about everything and that she had made the biggest mistake of her life. She said she missed me. She wanted to talk. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, I hit delete. Because the truth was, I didn't hate Emily anymore. I just didn't care. She was my past. And I was finally ready for my future.